Well, Carson, I'm going to need your help here because I was very excited to come on here and open with sports as my lead in. But even though in the time since our last episode, NFL season has started, my team, the Houston Texans, is 0-2. So I'm very not excited to talk about that. I hope there's more good news coming on the way, but I heard them Blue Jays are doing pretty good.
They're
I'm wondering,
great.
Can you give me a positive update? Can you give me some good news?
The Blue Jays are on as we record this at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, September 17th, on a 6-game winning streak and looking to make it 7 tonight. If they win, I forget what the number is. It's like less than 8 more games in the rest of the season. They will win the division. I think by this point they are effectively guaranteed a playoff spot unless they like seriously blow it. So that's good news. That was going to be was not going to be my recommendation, but I do recommend if you're watching this and you are someone who will bandwagon in the postseason, get in there early and you'll seem really cool to your friends who will bandwagon once we're in the postseason and everyone's like, I can't believe the Toronto Blue Jays are in the World Series postseason.
It's a good call. I'm probably going to do exactly that. So stay tuned.
Might as well just start now because they've been pretty good. Not their greatest run of the year, but this is the time to start watching if you think you might.
Well, my client Corey Weeds is a big fan, and he devotes an increasingly large percentage of his social posts on his own account, not the Seller Live account that I'm logged into, but his own account, to rage posting at the Yankees when they lose. And that's been happening. So he's been making those kind of posts I've been noticing.
It's so fun. I mean, that's the best part about being a Blue Jays fan this year is they're doing much better than the Yankees, and Yankees fans really don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, this is uncharted territory.
Yeah.
So that's a pre-recommendation for you, which we could see if we end up returning to it later. But we might spend the bulk of today talking about a single person, single creator, a single video, something that we could have talked about a few weeks ago, but we didn't. And now there's a little bit more to it because she's put out another video. There are many other creators in our neck of the woods who have already talked about this. So we've had some time to process reactions to it. Touches on many of our favorite themes. This is KARRA, who's a YouTuber and musician and production influencer, I would say is a fair description of it. She has hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube. She has followings on TikTok and Instagram where she posts music producer content, which is not exactly my bag because I'm not a big music producer, but it's more closer to where you are, Carson, and it is a big deal. And that's a skill that she's developed alongside being like a pop, EDM, indie pop artist. It's hard to describe her music. I poked around a little bit of her music. I don't know if you did.
I didn't give it a listen beyond kind of what's featured in the first video we're going to talk about, but partially because I think the music itself is almost secondary to the conversation.
Yeah, because I don't think we're here to talk about, and this is a distinction from what a lot of the other creators did, is we're not going to try and tell this person what she should have done. I don't think that really matters. I think that's the catchiest topic when it comes to what we're going to talk about, but I'm not interested in what she should have done. I, like you, I believe the more interesting thing is what it says about where we are. Yeah. And so the title of the first video is boldly titled, I invested $100,000 to create my album and Spotify deleted it, which right off the bat isn't entirely true. The amount of money is. Spotify deleting it, to be determined. This is a story about distributors. Yes. And it touches on some things for me professionally that I've come to my feelings about this topic have been amplified by learning about this. So I could get into some of the background of it, or do you want to jump in and tell me about when you watched this video? Because I think we hooked up on this video maybe several weeks ago, came out in mid-August or mid to late August. Did we watch it like right around then?
Yeah, I think you kind of watched it the week it came out, or maybe just the week after that. And yeah, the video is kind of what it says on the tin, where, she has this kind of career in the creative arts or in the music scene as I think a songwriter, producer, Seems like she's done a lot of different things, and finally, investing in her solo work, and invested all this money, a lot of money, into the music videos, and not marketing. I was gonna say promo, but actually, it's notably nothing on marketing. It's really like the videos was the main cost.
Yes.
Studio time, all this stuff. And she did everything kind of very by the book, and very, I think she's in LA. And so very sort of like had a union crew do her music video, all this stuff, which is like the right thing to do for a big production. And had her music, this is like the high level summary, had her music taken off of Spotify for, I believe Spotify's reasoning was, suspected bot streams. And sort of was blindsided by this when she, alleges that she did not pay for any fake streams.
Yeah, she gets into her background and stuff. First video is longer. There's a part 2, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end too, but it's definitely mostly about this first video, which got the most views, the most attention, the most people talking about it. You went straight to, which is a good level set here, one of the things that a lot of the other creators talked about, which is how can she say that she spends $40,000 on video shoots, which that's like almost half the total budget right there is just on video shoots, and not spend like any on what people pay me to do, like Facebook ads and things like that? How can you invest so much into the content and then spend nothing to circulate it? I think as far as those who were trying to go on the, oh, here's what she should have done angle, I think that was the hottest topic, maybe, was that there wasn't like a promotion budget despite all the huge spending on the music itself.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're not in the business of saying should have. I think that's not that helpful. I would say when I saw the title of the video, my first thought was, if you didn't want to feel like that was wasted money, if Spotify was key to you feeling like that was money well spent, you should have spent that money either later or in a different way. That's maybe my initial read when I read something about that, is like, we talk about platform risk. If you are dependent on a platform to make your investment worthwhile, and she doesn't really talk about needing to make back $100,000. Really, I don't think it sounds like she's never saying like, I need to make this investment back exactly. But she is framing the video in the context of like, I spend all this money on like videos. She makes canvases, and the videos are for the Spotify canvases. She's really invested in the platform itself, right? She's like doubling down on her presence on Spotify.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it sting harder. Whereas if you spend $100,000 on all sorts of things, ideally by the end of it, whether it's on streaming services doesn't matter, because you have all these assets and connections with fans and whatnot. You can kind of pivot regardless of what happens on streaming platforms.
Let's stay for a minute on justifying the expense, you could say, or how much it stung, or the sunk costs of it all. Because if you zoom ahead to part 2, she spends a lot of part 2 justifying her spending as basically her university degree in the business or so. Yeah. Not just the business, but as like an education in not only the business but the creative process. And she also talks about like how she supported her, the people on the film side, the videographers. She gave them work at fair rates, like you said, during the writer's strike, during an interesting timing there. And so she felt that was a satisfying part of the story, that she got to give a good gig to these people at an interesting time. But that, I mean, you don't have to spend $100,000 to feel that way. I've felt that way. You've probably felt that way too, right? Where it's like you tally up in your mind how much you put into the album or the project or whatnot, and then it comes out, and then you're like, man, I spent all that for this?
Sure, right, yeah. And again, I think if you're ever putting that, it's kind of the thing of kind of mental comparison or something as well, right? Like, it is a waste of mental energy to look at the money you spend. don't spend any money you cannot afford to lose on your music career. That's basically, I think, the advice it comes down
Spend
to.
on your albums like you're buying Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Something like that. This is not an investment. This is an expense, and then hopefully, you get to have a nice time on the way. Well, it sounds like she came to that perspective, by the second video. I didn't quite get that tone in the first video. I got a little more of a like, I spent all this money and now it's for nothing because Spotify took me down. But I think, after watching the second video, it's maybe a little more of a nuanced and well-rounded position she arrived at.
I think she does imply it in the first video, even if she doesn't state it outright. There was a theme that I picked up on there in the first one where I kind of realized as I was watching it, there's a point when she highlights like, oh, I went all out and I bought all this camera gear to continue the videography and the post-production in-house, and I learned about that stuff. And she kind of revealed how because she's invested that money into camera gear and video related stuff, she ended up creating a big enough flow of content that this content, when she ended up posting it, there was enough of it that it was able to snowball enough that it created a whole new business line for her. Like, she became what I referred to off the top as a music production influencer, where she wasn't before, and she wouldn't have been able to unlock that unless she had the impetus to start learning about that stuff as heavily as she did, and not only to start learning about it, but to post about it so aggressively. The investment in all the video content was necessary for her to post that much. Her posting that much was necessary for a few of the clips to pop off on TikTok or whatever and start getting her brand deals and product reviews and things like that. That is the real true investment in the equation. Like, I think if you took what we were just talking about, you could be like, oh, she shouldn't have used the word invested in the title because it's not really an investment. That's kind of where we were going with that. But I think in this one sense, it actually was.
Yeah, I think that's right. And she says in the second video that her first video made her more money in revenue than, the however long her album was on Spotify for made, and it's like over a month or something.
Yes, that's right. She says, this video, I invested $100,000 to create my album, Spotify deleted. It has already earned more in YouTube revenue for her through her YouTube channel as a YouTuber than her album did. Yeah.
Which is not that surprising if you know anything about like how YouTube ad revenue works versus streaming mechanical royalties work. But still, I think that's a very valid point. And if you watch any of her stuff, it is very high production value. She has become a very good video producer. The video is pretty engaging. Again, the music is really secondary to what she's doing. That's partially why I didn't even check it out. It was like, this is an interesting video she made sharing her story, and it's a well-made video. And so, yeah, it's, in that sense, the time she put into that is money well spent and time well spent.
And we don't want to generalize to any other artists who wouldn't be happy if we were like, oh, the music is secondary. That's not what we're saying. We're saying like, although the music is complementary in a business sense, and it's not the main line of business, it feeds a bigger view of what the business is. And for her, that business has become so tied to being an influencer, and for lack of a better word, but for being a YouTuber. And she talks about that. She talks about how she has come to feel that music only becomes very valuable when attached to video. I think that's something she gets into in part two. She kind of, it's almost like she doesn't really understand like the hookup to an official artist channel from your like DistroKids or CD Babies of the world. Like, it seems like her first brush with it, she didn't understand how it works, and one of her songs pre this album that the whole video is about ended up getting taken down because of it, like because she didn't understand how like her distributor's account was claiming the video on her YouTube channel or something. And then later it seems like she still doesn't really understand it. Like and that's weird to be fair. Like I have never at any of my label clients successfully hooked up all of our artists' YouTube channels to our distributor. We've never gotten that far. That's a high bar.
Yeah, there's a few kind of gaps there. And I mean, I would also say for the first video, or the whole premise of the thing, that this possibility that, again, that Spotify could just do this to you, or this can just happen, again, shouldn't be that surprising if you've like know anything about this or done your research, right? In the second video, she talks a lot more about streaming fraud, which we've talked about, or this issue that like there's no verification when someone wants to upload a song onto your profile. All they have to do is say that you're the artist.
The
And
Russian cake disease.
the Russian cake thing. She has a someone uploaded like a pretty goofy remix or something of one of her tracks, but it's like a negative. It's not a flattering remix. I did not listen to that one either. And so again, I think with the knowledge that we have, talking about this stuff all the time and really researching our stuff on Spotify, I think I was watching a lot of both videos going like, well, yeah, like this is kind of what I would expect, given just the state of where things are at. And, but it's still very interesting to see that laid out and see from someone who is less sucked into this world of critiques of the streaming economy, how they're experiencing it and what things they're surprised at.
Yeah, I probably should have run this down right at the beginning, but I will now. Just this is the timeline of how she got impacted with the distribution all the way up to when the album got fully taken down. So the first thing we talked about, like she had a different song before where there was some kind of misunderstanding or issue with like connecting to YouTube, and so that song got taken down. That ends up being important to the story though, because due to her frustration with that experience, and this is like a year or two or whatever prior to now. This is before she spends all the money and makes the album. She switches to DistroKid. And then she goes and she makes her album and spends the money. And it's a fulfilling creative project by everything she says. And, what we could imagine ourselves, that could be a lot of fun and it could be really awesome to make an album that way. It's a great, you can tell that she's really into all facets of the creative process. And that's really cool. She wants to find a label partner for the project, and she does not. And I think this is pretty common. And then she decides, okay, I'm just going to put it out anyways. She currently has that DistroKid account active, so she puts it out on DistroKid on release day. And you did mention this a few minutes ago. DistroKid doesn't upload the Canvas videos properly, so she's not happy with that. Then, as a completely unrelated issue, TikTok mutes the audio on the organic posted videos that she's putting there. And the reason why, she says, is because she had a co-writer on one or maybe a lot of songs that were synced to those videos. These are videos that were part of her big, fancy, expensive video budget, but her co-writer was with Universal Publishing or something. And TikTok and Universal were feuding, and so TikTok was muting all the audio that was pertaining to Universal artists, songwriters, and rights holders. And so she got screwed by that by no fault of her own. That's not even a distributor problem. That's a TikTok problem.
Yes.
So that's just weird. That's unfortunate. And then in mid-August 2025, she gets notified by DistroKid that the album got taken down from Spotify for artificial streaming. And I have started to notice this on at least one or more of my clients' earnings for albums, that some distributors are charging this $10 USD artificial streaming fee now. And this is a distinction where if you have a self-serve distributor and they flag artificial streaming or like bot playlist related activity or something, and they want to punish you, they will just take the music down. But if you're with a real distributor, they won't take it down. They will fine $10 per infraction, and they will just keep you there.
Interesting.
So there's parallel paths of how completely different paths of how they would deal with this. So because she's on DistroKid, the album gets taken down, and very likely if she was with whichever other label partner, it would not get taken down. So that's an important aspect to this story. This is the part that has resonated the most with me, because it's got me thinking about like where the different people I spend my time with, where they fit into this equation and what could happen to them. But what KARRA comes out of it with at the end of the video, she says, quote, "The permanent decision to never distribute or release a song for streaming ever again." And that's a separate side of it. But I will just make one point about my world and how I viewed this when I kind of understood what was going on. There are some labels where as a label, there's no value add in distribution digitally. Let's just talk digitally, because
Yeah.
nobody, KARRA didn't make any CDs or LPs or anything like that. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about digital streaming. There are some labels out there where there's no value add in digital distribution. That label just has a DistroKid account, basically.
Yeah.
Literally, or whichever other self-serve distributor, and they're gonna put out your music through their DistroKid account. And so the nuts and bolts and the ones and zeros of it are exactly the same as if you did it yourself.
Yeah.
They're just doing it for you, and they're aggregating it, and they will have their way that they pay out their earnings to you or whatever. But there are a lot of labels out there where they just do that.
Yeah.
They're using an off-the-shelf self-serve digital distributor.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the labels who don't. There are the ones who have the major partnered distributors, like the Orchard is with Sony and so on, or they have like more robust distribution hookups. And those labels, they can get answers to questions. They can get
Right.
charged these fees instead of, stuff just being taken down by default. And when I heard this story, one of my reactions was, I'm starting to think that it's a bit sketchy, if not a bit immoral or unfortunate, if you are trying to run a label and you don't have a real distribution hookup, because you are subjecting the artist to things that you won't be able to control.
Yes.
If they go south.
Right.
And it made me reckon with the fact that as a label, if you are getting into bed with an artist with an agreement, to some extent, I don't know if I would be comfortable as a label in this world, if this is going to happen more often, if I'm just putting their music on the DistroKid account and I don't have any say. It made me realize that like one of the fundamental value adds of the label has to be, okay, we have real distribution and we can solve issues that come up, and we can kind of guarantee that we can solve your problems. It made me reckon with that.
That's a really good point about the kind of the value add there, especially at a time where a label's utility to an artist is getting a little more dubious, right? Where it's like, well, what if an artist can do everything themselves, then what's the label there for? Then, I mean, that's a great potential way a label's, serving a function for an artist. Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. I think, as we like talk out all of the timelines there and every kind of misfortune along the way, this goes back to our conversation a couple episodes ago where I was talking about, it's time for artists to get technical. And part of being technical includes like knowing how to test things, right? There's a lot of what we would call in my world YOLOing to prod, where you just put out the whole album, or you would, you releasing something to production without, taking some like slow and deliberate steps here, right? Like when the YouTube, like even the initial kind of blooper happens with a distributor and her YouTube official channel happens, instead of like digging into like why that happened, just switching to another distributor kind of was like the root of many of these issues. As well as the canvas thing, release a song, check if the canvas happens when you want, and if it doesn't, plan your stuff a little bit differently. You can plan your release, but it sounded like this happens all the time, right? Like, especially in the jazz world, someone will say like, yeah, my album's coming out like on this Friday. And then they hit the button on DistroKid 2 days before that Friday. And like the distributor, I mean, Spotify receives it, like 10 days after that, or 5 business days after that. And so this has stopped now. I think people have learned their lesson, but I used to see many people going like, well, it's actually not on streaming yet. It's on my Bandcamp, but it'll be on streaming in when it gets on streaming, and then I'll
Yeah,
announce.
I did that with one of my friends when I was kind of working them through it. I was kind of I left that too a bit too late. I thought it was enough lead time, even between 1 and 2 weeks was maybe where we were at. But
Yeah.
I waited until then to get the assets ready with him to put something out, and then it ended up being too late. And if I had arranged it earlier, it would have been okay. So yeah, I did that.
Yeah, and even like again, it's not saying don't do that. It's just to test. So if she had just done one song with one canvas and gone, oh, interesting. Okay, that song's canvas did not show up until like 5 days after the song came out. That's just more information. Test it, and then instead of having this whole bummer of an experience, especially when like that's really where her invested money was going, right? Like that 40K is the video budget that went to her canvases, which I would say have dubious. I could be wrong about that actually. As I was watching the video, I was like, don't spend money on making Spotify canvases. Make one music video and chop it up, which is I think what David and I did for Teardown. Or like make a little, get an animator on Fiverr to make you a little animation that loops,
Yeah.
the bespoke. There were a couple things that were maybe just matters of taste where I was like, and I think that's met much of the criticism she received after the first video is people going like, what are you doing? I don't spend as much money as you can afford to lose. Like that's great. Again, good learning opportunity. Like she said, I think she called it her like master's degree in, in like music production and filmography and et cetera. It's like, that's very cool. Good learning experience if she could afford it. I think
Yeah.
Spotify canvases, speaking of like platform risk, I know that now Apple has their own equivalent with like an animated album art or something, what they do now, but that seems dubious to me. But yeah, I think testing in general was kind of absent from this whole thing, as far as like how the release goes.
Yeah, because you could imagine if you had even a slightly closer mindset to what you were just talking about, the project would have just been very different. Like it probably would have started with a single, and she talks about a later music video that she follows on to the album with that she says she enjoyed the process a lot more because it was more stripped down, didn't cost as much. She was working with fewer vendors and she felt like it came together effortlessly almost compared to what she was doing before. Because yeah, she spent all that money to make the canvases. She did also like repurpose the video from these shoots to like feed all this other content that she was posting organically leading up to release. So it's not like it was just on canvas, but like later she does talk about how she does this stripped down music video and it feels better. So even if you started with that, a lot of the pain along the way would have been diminished for sure. We can see that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the iteration would have been a more conducive model, right? Like starting however you want to start, but the front loading all the expense and all the costs before you even know what it's like to release a song on Spotify, before you realize. I think also sometimes people truly don't realize how rough streaming is, and then if you did know that, you release a couple songs and you go like, okay, that's nice. I'm getting like, she was getting a lot of plays. She might look at her streaming numbers and go like, or her royalty numbers and go like, I should pivot maybe to spending maybe a little bit of marketing to get people to like come to my shows and buy my merch, or pivot to meta ads to redirect people to like my Bandcamp page, or what, one of these gajillion Bandcamp alternatives. She's certainly not in the world of like a Subvert or whomever. But I think that approach would be my advice to like another artist trying this. Again, this is not about, I think the way she did things were very legitimate. She's in a very tough spot. And we haven't even gotten to why the music got taken down really. Like, to your understanding, is it Spotify detects the artificial streams, or is it the distributor detects, or is it like Spotify reports data to the distributor and the distributor makes the decision to take down?
Well, that's exactly what I was getting at. That's a great point when I was talking about like how the bigger, B2B distributors get a different outcome.
Yeah.
and the self-serve ones, the music does get taken down, and some other ones it doesn't, and they're just fined or something, because yeah, it is Spotify that flags it on Spotify, but then it does get put to the distributor, and it looks like the distributor gets to decide what to do about it.
That is interesting. And it's one of those things where I have, for a long time, to my friends who are self-releasing music, they've like said like, oh, what distributor should I go with? I've always been like, it doesn't matter. And maybe it truly doesn't, but you are giving that distributor actually quite a lot of power over the future of your music. And that's how you get your money. You know, Spotify doesn't pay you, your distributor pays you. And so your relationship with that distributor does matter. Maybe more than you might think of.
But unfortunately, all the self-serve ones are going to suck in the same way.
Yes.
None of them are going to be the good guys. They're all taking in as many artists as possible, and then they're going to be just as happy to kick some of those artists off if they have to, because they're still taking in as many artists as possible. It's quantity over quality for them.
Yeah, because they're just paid, in DistroKid's case, per artist. Some are paid per release or per album or whatever. Is there any that still do like per track that you know of?
Per track has been competed away. Some still have a percentage, like a small rev share, but it's definitely not like a rev share that incentivizes that much customer support. I think it makes sense if you think about CD Baby as like one that maybe still has some kind of reputation for being a little bit more human, because they're the one out of the big 2 or 3 that do still charge a small rev share. Yeah. I think it's 7% or 9%, you know, so they're slightly more incentivized. And is true, you know, if you distribute something with CD Baby, it'll stay up there. It has more permanence than like a DistroKid, where the music, they'll pull the music if you stop paying your annual fee to DistroKid, right? So CD Baby will keep your music up there because they just have a little bit of incentive. Yeah. But, you know, quantity over quality all across the board. And then it's not like, oh, those of us who see this issue, we can go and all find label partners who have real distributors, because those labels and those distributors are going to want to do quality over quantity, and they're going to want to gatekeep those relationships. So they're not going to offer seats to everybody. They're going to want to keep the model working to benefit the artist that needs to benefit. So we can't all go and do it. If we want to be on streaming, we can't all go and do it another way. But if we want to not be on streaming, maybe we can, you know, maybe if we want to do it only DIY, or, you know, only independently, and we don't want, and we're okay if we're gonna turn our backs on streaming, you know, we can avoid this headache. Is it going to become so much of a headache that's going to drive more people to do that? Is it all just going to be political, or is it going to be a mix of both? Yeah, I mean, we'll see what the mix is.
Yeah, it kind of just comes back to the trade-off of like, do you want gatekeepers or not, right? These types of situations are the price you pay for this really being open to anyone, which many people would view as a net positive, right? That's one of the main defenses of like our current state of streaming, is the gates are wide open. Anyone can upload an album, and Spotify is chock full of them, and they don't have to be good. But you run into situations like this where distributors are so overwhelmed. Even if they cared, they couldn't really do anything about this because of the sheer volume of the problem, the sheer volume of the artist, the sheer volume of the bot streams. And it's probably worth briefly touching on like the circumstances that lead to artificial streams. Because I certainly believe KARRA saying like she didn't buy streams, which is a thing you can do, artificially inflate your numbers, and yet is still impacted by Spotify saying, hey, there's, you know, fake streams and you're out of here. It seems like, and there's another kind of YouTube video related to this by Venus Theory. I think he subtitles it in the video, The Gang Does Streaming Fraud, where he kind of learns about how all this stuff works, because I believe either himself or Ben Jordan were experienced a very similar thing to this, and we're curious about like how this all goes down. Basically, it seems like what happens is a legitimate artist releases some music, and then some bad actor who is botting. By botting, we mean like using artificial bots to fake streams so that they get revenue, or pump up their stream count. Someone who's botting has music that's uploaded that's either fake or whatever, they're inflating their streams, but they need to put it on playlists with some legitimate music. And so you'll have these, fake artists or these botted songs in with legitimate artists, and the artificial streams stream the whole playlist. And so people get caught kind of just like in the crossfire. And there's nothing you can do to control that. You can't see your song get added to a playlist, and it would be foolhardy to do so and say, like, take me off of there. I don't want my songs on any playlists, because you never know what could happen.
Yeah.
And so that's, likely how this happened to KARRA, if she, again, didn't engage with any kind of marketing or whatever, because I do also believe that there'd be marketing services that wouldn't say explicitly that they're going to boost your streams artificially, but might do this so that their marketing services look better or something.
Okay, I want to throw you the gauntlet on this, because I wasn't sure if I fully agree with this, but I'll put this to you and you let me know if you agree with this. So for the 80% of artists who don't have a lot of streaming earnings, and where it's not a big priority for them, and maybe they would rather not do it, they're doing it because it's the thing to do, and they can't, they haven't arranged like a whole other way of how they want to go about their business and stuff, so they're on there, but it's not going to drive significant income to them the way that you're going about it. And I'm in this camp too. A lot of us are in this camp. Is this becoming such an annoyance that this can happen to you through no fault of your own, and that you're maybe more likely to end up as a pawn for bot playlisters, like being a fall guy, being the human on a bot playlist? Are we getting to the point where it's more likely that that's going to happen, that we're going to get anything out of it to our benefit? And is this going to be the bottom line that people are going to turn their backs on this system for when they realize that? Would you go that far?
I think the answer is kind of. The only reason I'm not going to not exactly say yes is because if you are the kind of artist profile that you described in the question, where you kind of already understand that streaming is not really going to do much for you, then I actually don't think it matters that much. I think who this matters for is people who are doing this with some hope of racking up streams, that they're depending on a streaming platform to help grow their audience. And again, we've talked in so many different episodes about like why that's a bad idea and why you should not be doing that, and why streaming platforms and getting high numbers of streams are not a path to true audience relationships. But if you were not convinced by those arguments, certainly this is a great example of someone who got burned so badly that this is someone who went into this saying like, okay, I care about how my Spotify numbers are doing. My Spotify numbers are going to do. I want to make canvases, which Spotify loves. And, she was doing everything right as far as like optimizing for Spotify, and then got burned so badly that it's like, then actually, no, I'm not going to do this ever again. That is who I think is burned here. I think if you don't care, like, for the Will Chernoff stuff, you could leave it on. We've talked for other reasons about like it's time to leave Spotify, but like on Apple Music or whatever, which are all going to suffer the same problem, right? Because it's all the same distributors, the same bad actors. I think the problem is most pervasive on Spotify, but they'll just move to another platform, right? Because they'll still get their mechanical royalties on botted streams no matter what.
Even though the playlist side of it, which is like the key enabler, it is only open enough to facilitate it really on Spotify. I guess that's why it's been, that and the much bigger user base. Those are two big factors why it's happened so much there. Maybe it wouldn't propagate as much to the other platforms, even if they got as much listener base, because the playlist side of it isn't there. But, those two ingredients are important. Yeah.
Yes. Also on the technical side, Spotify's API is a lot more open than the other ones, and so it's much easier to like programmatically make playlists and whatnot.
That's way back in the DNA of the company too, like back in the day when they had a direct integration with Facebook.
Yeah, right. You can just plug into stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I talked about that coding project I did where I wanted to sync when I added things to Spotify to an app called Notion. I was only able to do that because Spotify's API is very open. And, I tried making the same thing for Apple Music when I switched off of Spotify. No dice. Well, I could code something, but it would cost me like $125 a year just to be able to work with Apple's API. That's a long tangent, but to answer your question about, is this going to be the thing that gets people to finally just be like, you know what, it's not worth the trouble? I would say probably if you get taken down, people will say it's not worth the trouble to like put anything back up there. And that might, for each individual, result in people slowly deciding, okay, that was my last release on streaming. Which, really accelerates the whole dead internet theory of Spotify, right? We've talked about like the AI artists. We've talked about the profiles not being legitimate anymore, which KARRA also talked about. And so, we're accelerating to this state where, like, I hate to say it, platforms becoming enshittified.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say like, oh, we can go into like this post distro era where like people don't have to play the game of uploading to streaming anymore. They can just be YouTubers, and then they can have direct channels like all those platforms we talked about last episode, or they can have like a direct sales. They can rely on YouTube, but then you got YouTube platform risk. So like, KARRA talks very positively about YouTube. Her experience has been great. There's tons of creators out there who talk negatively about their customer support experiences with YouTube. So it's not like I can say, oh, you can solve this problem by just being a YouTuber and skipping the whole DistroKid streaming game. No, I mean, then you're just tying yourself to a different wagon, you know?
Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to our kind of main ethos of, if you want to avoid these problems, it's time to get DIY with it, time to get creative, time to diversify the platforms you're relying on. And, while it's probably not feasible to like leave all of them, to make sure that you're, again, not hitching yourself to just one wagon and hoping. Because, YouTube's famous for taking stuff down with no explanation or bad explanation, especially in the music world, right? Where like copyright strikes can happen. There's one that happened in this story, right? Where like a distributor can strike a legitimate video that you uploaded, or the TikTok story that from this exact same thing. She really has been through an awful gauntlet of like everything that could go wrong.
Playing the hits. Yeah, absolutely. Greatest hits of distribution hell.
Oh man. So that's, I feel bad for her that she's been through all that, but also, she's learned kind of the hardest lesson in a very short time, which is like, just it's probably time to not do this stuff.
We got to have the KARRA and Rick Beato interview sit down where they can talk about all their distribution woes on every single platform and all the copyright problems. Has
Beato been hit? Oh, his YouTube channel gets struck, right? Is that the big thing?
Yeah, he has like the monetization issues and the copyright issues when, he wants to play artist music, and because the artists he talks to are all very famous major label, classic artists or whatever, and he has had many different eras of that being a problem for him. Yeah, now I think he's on strike too, right? Like he's going to reach a full count of his YouTube channel at some point, and so he's been talking about it over the last month as well, a lot because of that. Because if he doesn't succeed in disputing future charges against him, then his channel will be deleted.
Yeah, and then imagine how hard it is to go from his stature as a YouTuber back to square one or even a second channel. He should start now.
That's even worse, right? That would be like, I invested like, millions of sweat equity and real equity put together into my YouTube channel, and YouTube deleted it. Would be that. Yeah,
absolutely. That would be rough. I would not wish that on Rick. Wild times. And I do think we are like nearing, but you could say that for like Facebook, right? That like, are we nearing the end of this platform? And like the platforms persist, groups of users leave, like maybe you and I and all our friends are just like off in the next couple of years of streaming platforms. But like, grandmas in Malaysia aren't going to care about this, and they might not care if half the music they hear is AI. Right? There's like, it's so myopic to say like, oh, Spotify's cooked because of this, but it's like people love the dead internet. Facebook is more popular than ever in like certain areas, right? Like Shrimp Jesus, the AI slop, people are loving it, which, you know, is a sad state of affairs. But like each time I say like, okay, no, it's now we're really done. It's not really the case, right? These platforms do just fine without North American millennials.
Oh man, people love the dead internet. Is that an episode title?
Yeah, maybe.
Yikes. I wanted to see, roughly speaking, Spotify share price movement since we started this show, which is about 6 months, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's up between like 17 and 20% since we started this show. And that's a macro story for the most part. But I mean, there, you know, to the point of people love the dead internet, we could fix that.
Man, that really is a bummer.
Yeah.
17 to 20%?
Yeah, 18.37% when I just hit the 6 month chart right now. Yeah.
Yikes. Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder how.
Well, let's not go out on that. Let's use our recommendations to get to a better place here.
That's great.
We can't go out like that. So what do you have?
I have an album. I'm gonna double dip. I'm gonna take 2 recommendations. The first is an easy one. Anyone who plays video games is already playing Silk Song. It's a very good video game. The sequel to Hollow Knight. It's very hard, and I'm very upset with it. But if you have not heard of it, recommend. The recommendation is an album called "God's Gonna Give You $1 Million" by an artist called Shallow Water.
Okay.
And I guess we'll put a Shallow Water. There's only one W in it. So it's shallow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll type it in our notes here. It's like kind of alt country, but with some noisy elements. Very good. Very good album. What about you? What do you got for the people?
That sounds like it'll be up my alley. I like stuff that's like that. I don't know if this is exactly the same thing, but this is what I'm publishing today for Subscribe Fridays at Rhythm Changes. Is I've been going to the String Band Tuesdays at the Heatley because that just started up again.
Oh, sweet.
The kind of fiddle tune hang with the house band series. So I've been digging that. So this sounds like something I'll like. So I'm gonna go with we'll go back to sports to close it out. I'm gonna go with Pablo Torre Finds Out, the YouTube show. We were talking about our boy Steve Ballmer, who got mentioned on an episode glowingly a while ago. This is the journalist who has been reporting that story and others, and I've come to really love his podcast, his show on YouTube, Pablo Torre Finds Out. And so of course he's got the episodes now, multiple, that are his most popular if you sort by that, where he talks about this developing story where he seems to be putting the pieces together that an NBA team has been like slushing money around through like a sketchy company to pay a star player like extra money to under the table or something. But he has a very entertaining show. A lot of his other episodes are also really entertaining. He has a great one where there's, you know, legendary NFL coach Bill Belichick is like dating somebody who's 50 years younger than him, and he went to like an Airbnb that she booked, and like the Ring camera footage from the Airbnb got out, and so he went to this Airbnb and interviewed the owners and stuff like that. So there's lots of great stuff. Pablo Torre Finds Out. That's definitely my rec for what's been going on in the world of sports. So
that sounds
check it out.
Incredible. Man, sports executives behaving badly. Timeless.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that was a good one. It got a little dark, but you know, on the whole, this is about rolling with the conditions that we're in and figuring out a way to have fun anyway. That's what we're already doing. So
yeah,
I know it's gonna be okay. then we don't have that many subscribers to lose anyway, no matter what happens, whatever we say. So
Yeah, exactly. Deplatform us all you want. We'll be just fine.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah. All right. Well, we are in September here. So we're going to see already in October the next episode of Upsample. And that's going to be episode 20. So there's a fun milestone to look forward to. So that's going to be fun. Take it easy.
Take it easy. Enjoy your night. Cheers.